Today on Across the Fence, if you have a vegetable garden and are wondering what to do this time of year in addition to weeding and watering, or if you're wondering what problems to look for or what pests you may have, hopefully we'll have some answers for you. Hi, I'm Leonard Perry with University of Vermont Extension. Today I'm at the home of horticulturist Kathy LaLiberte near Richmond, Vermont. We were here a couple of months ago and this is what the garden looked like then compared to what it looks like now. Well, Kathy, it looks like you have a bumper crop of peas this year. These really look awesome. Looks like you're eating a lot of peas.
There are a lot of peas to eat. These are my sugar snap peas. I planted them probably the end of April. Now the middle of July, they're coming in really strong. They're starting to peter out. They've stopped flowering, so I'm going to eat what there is left here, and then probably pull them out. The stems will gradually wither, and I'll plant a second crop here in this space.
So you can actually plant another crop probably end of July, early August?
Yeah, as soon as I pull these out, when these are done, I'll put in something like maybe fall broccoli, kale, some lettuce would be good.
But not more peas?
No, I'll probably plant a fall crop of peas maybe in another couple weeks in a different place. I don't want to plant them in the same place. All plants have disease tendencies, and if you can keep them apart on a rotation of maybe 2 or 3 years, it's a good idea.
That's a good point. So these sugar snaps, again, you let them fill out.
Yep, they're really...
And you can eat the whole pod compared to regular shelling peas.
Right, they're nice and thick, and you can eat the whole thing. You can eat them raw, saute them, you can freeze them, and I also have made pickled peas.
Wow.
Last year I had a really huge crop, even more than this, and I pickled them with tarragon and some vinegar, and I even put some garlic scapes in there.
Wow, it just shows that if you have a lot of something in the garden, to maybe try something different. There are many ways you can use these things.
That's right. There's a lot of ways to eat sugar snap peas, and one of them is just right out here in the garden.
But again, you want to harvest, go through every day, every few days, and when they fill out, harvest those?
Yeah, it's usually for these kind of peas, it's about a 3-week harvest season, maybe 4.
But regularly, you don't just wait till one point and harvest them all
I think
at once.
every day is about right, or at least every 2 days, because it's amazing if it's warm and you've got a lot of moisture, they fill out really quickly. So the one day they'll be skinny, kind of flat, the next 2 days you'll come back and they've gotten really fat and they're ready.
And in a hot summer they'll probably go by a lot quicker.
That's right, and when they've gone by, the outsides will get a little bit puckered and dry. They're still edible, but they're really at their peak of flavor when they're nice and fat and full.
Well, Kathy, it's obvious with the peas when to harvest, but these potatoes that are growing in the ground, how do you tell when to harvest those? Well,
you can harvest potatoes at a couple different times. So you've often heard of maybe new potatoes, and new potatoes are harvested early, and let's take a look and see if these are ready. Usually you can tell right after they've flowered, these have flowered and dropped the flowers, that it's about the time to start seeing if your new potatoos are ready.
Okay.
So let's take a look. These are a purple potato. If you could just hold this back here, I'll dig and see what we've got.
So we're looking for a purple. There's a lot of unusual colors in vegetables now, and yeah, it looks like we see a purple.
So we've got some little potatoes. Now, the deal is these will get bigger. So you could take these, if you have a good supply of potatoes, you could take these and eat them now. There are a couple different kinds of potatoes, and some are really good for baking, and others are really good for boiling. And this is, I believe, a boiling potato. So the way I'll probably cook these little guys is in a pan with a little bit of water until they're cooked, and then serve them just with butter and parsley.
Well, Kathy, last time we were here, these tomatoes were covered in cloth. I went home, actually covered mine in cloth, and it really worked well to give them a little protection. Yeah,
it was a cool spring, and actually every spring I keep them wrapped up with garden fabric around the outside of these cages. And this year it was so cool, I left it on until really the 4th of July. And at that point they were starting to grow out the top of the cages. So I uncovered them, and this is what we've got. These are just set a lot of fruit, and they're starting to ripen. The cherry tomatoes are actually the ones that I'm already eating, and that's one of the reasons I grow cherry tomatoes. You get a lot of fruit, but also they ripen a little bit earlier than most of the other tomatoes.
So I guess where there's so many different tomato varieties, there are ones that ripen at all different times, and when you're choosing early in the season, that's probably what you want to watch. Make sure you don't get any that ripen too late,
right,
and maybe get a selection that ripens early, middle, and late, and then you'll have a nice harvest.
That's right. And I also like to pick different colored tomatoes. I have green ones here and orange, red. I guess that's about all we have.
I know there's
now.
some new colors in different vegetables. And the green ones, I know that's been a very popular one. The green zebra, how do you tell when that's ready to pick?
Well, the green zebra's kind of tricky, and you know, I didn't know. How do you know? It's called green zebra, and what I've found is that the best quality is when the fruit is still green, but the top kind of shoulder is just starting to turn a little bit yellow.
Okay.
And that's the time to pick them. But you know what? You just kind of experiment and see what.
And normally
how you
tomatoes, you know, if they're turning red and they have a nice red color, and you can always just taste one too.
Yep. Unless you have an orange tomato, and in that case,
that's true.
Orange is
so
right.
make sure you know what color
That's
tomatoes you
right.
have.
That's right.
Now, you mentioned these are growing. Will these keep growing, or these look like they're getting pretty tall here?
I've got some determinate tomatoes in here, and determinate tomatoes just grow to a certain height, stop, and ripen their fruit. But an indeterminate tomato actually gives you more fruit because it'll just keep growing. Tomatoes are perennials, and they just keep growing and growing and growing. In Vermont, obviously, there's a stop to the growing, but they produce a lot of fruit. And the thing is, you need, with a indeterminate, you need to provide enough support, or you start to get your this happening.
I know before I've had wheat cages and they haven't been very upright, and now I'll put a stake in it to hold them, and they've just toppled. There's been so much weight.
Yeah, they get incredibly heavy. So, but you know, you can come around here and tie these up with whatever you've got handy, pantyhose or string or rope, and kind of keep them neat. A lot of people prune their tomatoes and take the suckers out. The suckers are the little stem that grows in the crotches of the vine. And if you're going to be training your tomatoes up a stake or something like that, usually you need to prune those suckers because it's just going to get too wild. I don't prune them, I just don't have time. I have other things that I'd rather do. So I leave them, and it just makes for a more foliage. But I think all in all, you get about the same amount of fruit.
Just make sure you have a good cage if you're going to have all that foliage on it.
It's going to get big, definitely.
Well, kind of related up here to it's another very popular vegetable, the pepper. These are looking pretty good. Looks like some fruit are coming. Tell us what you have here.
Yeah, the peppers are coming. They're always slow in Vermont to get going. They really are a hot weather crop. I always think of them, they should be in Mexico. I think they think that too. Yeah. Like, what am I doing here? So these I also kept covered until the first week of July, surrounded with that garden fabric to make a nice warm microclimate. And then I took the cover off, and they basically just were stuck for 2 weeks, freaked out. And now they're starting to kind of say, okay, it's summer, and they're starting to set fruit. So there's lots of buds on here, and the fruit's starting to form. This is I usually grow red peppers. I like them sweet. So this is green. When this gets a little bigger and it looks like a regular green pepper, you can certainly eat it. It's just a green pepper. Or you can leave it and it'll gradually ripen, and depending upon what kind of pepper variety you have, it'll ripen yellow, orange, purple, red, and some of them just stay green.
So you can actually eat them whenever, really.
Yeah, whenever you want to eat them, really.
I know before we've thought they were ready. Once we've grown the sweet peppers, we've harvested them, then we realized later, oh, these would have turned color if we left them on the plant. But
well, you know, usually they're making enough that you can, you know, you can spare a green one now and then if you just need one for the salad. These are hot peppers. I think this is a jalapeno plant right here, and these will probably just stay green. But again, you could eat them at any point.
Okay, so it's not like you have to wait till there's a certain stage like some other vegetables.
You can always pull one off and take a bite of one of those jalapenos and see if you think it's hot enough.
See if it's hot enough.
Right.
Tell us about that. Speaking of color, this is gorgeous, this lettuce here.
Yeah, this is a red romaine, and this has actually gone by. What I mean by that is that the lettuce starts to elongate. So usually you imagine your lettuce plant is just, you know, down here. And as it starts to get ready to set flower, which this just...
Is that what they call bolting?
Yeah, so it's bolting, and the flower is going to come out here in just probably the next week or so. So what's happened is this is elongated, it's starting to flower, and if you break this off, or you break even just a piece of lettuce here, you'll see it's got this milky sap in here.
Yep.
This has sort of a bitter taste to it, and if you don't have any other lettuce to eat in your garden, you can...
Or if you like it bitter.
If you're into bitter, right? You can cut these off and soak them in cold water for a couple hours, and it takes a lot of the bitterness out of it. I'll probably put a fall crop of beets in here. And when I do that, I'm going to cover it up with some shade netting. So I'm going to take this out, fork it up, smooth it over, put the beets in, and then cover it with this fabric. And the reason I'm doing that is to keep the soil moist, because it takes moisture to break that seed coat and get the seedling started. And also this is going to keep the soil cooler, because in the middle of the summer it's hard for little seedlings to go through a week of 85 degrees. You don't have to be out here watering every day too. So I'll keep them covered up until probably mid-August, late August, when the weather starts to cool off a little bit. Then I'll take this off, because there's less light at that time of year, and you want to be sure the crops are getting as much light as possible as it starts. I
always wondered about that, sowing a fall crop that needs cool in the summer, how to do it, and that's the answer. You just put the shade on and keep it cooler.
Make it think that it's cooler, But definitely take it off late in the summer so that it's going to get enough light. Otherwise they'll be kind of leggy, and you want to try to avoid that.
Well, I assume too, if you have them covered when the seedlings come up, that'll protect them from feeding. If you have any
yes, there's been some feeding going on in my garden this summer, which is why I have this covered up. This is the garden fabric, that same kind of thing I used around the tomatoes earlier in the season. And I've got
That's just wire hoops with some clothespins, very simple. And
yep. So I have rabbits this year. Haven't had rabbits before. Why I have rabbits now?
They found you.
Yes.
The word got out.
So I also have really bad slug problem this year. So you can see my basil.
Can't hardly tell what that is. Boy, poor plants.
So this is a lettuce leaf basil that's been in here since May, and this is, I mean, it's just...
And you haven't been picking it, the rabbit's been eating it.
No, I have never had a piece of basil yet. So this is more basil I started in the greenhouse I put out last week, and you see it's already munched. Here I have, again, this is, I don't know, the second or third planting of broccoli, and this needs to get covered because the rabbits, these just went out. And I left them to get nice and large in pots and put them out when I thought they could take it, but the rabbit the next night was chomping. So you saw my second planting. This is my first planting of broccoli, and you can understand why I needed a second planting. I have gotten some heads off of this, but I don't know what's happening. I think it's weather related. Broccoli's a cool weather crop. You know, in Vermont often it just gets warm really quickly, and sometimes it kind of buttons up and gets these strange looking heads on it. But I'm going to go down here and cut this head off. You can use a knife, work a heck of a lot better than this pruning shears. So cut this off, and then I'm going to use the parts of this that are good. But it's not the kind of, I mean, this is kind of disappointing.
Well, it's not the big head, but again, it's in the garden. You can make do with what you got, and like this way, you're gonna. I would be happy putting some of that in a salad, you know, just to add it up.
And also with broccoli, it does send up once you've cut off the main head. It'll start to send up side shoots for the next, at least a month or so.
So once you cut those off, will you let those side shoots develop, and then you'll get something like this?
You'll get little side shoots like this that are perfectly good, you know.
That you can just use small scale too and fry up or in a salad or whatever.
Right, right.
Well, I guess, you know, you're talking about weather related here and with the lettuce. Is there anything, I guess you can't do much about the weather, right?
Well, I do have a backup plan.
So Kathy, I guess this is your backup plan then.
This is my backup plan, my greenhouse. You can see I have a second, well, a third or fourth crop maybe of cucumbers growing here. So if the cucumber beetles completely decimate the ones out in the garden, I can put these out there. I may not plant them. I may just wind up putting them in the compost. I have some more basil growing too.
For the bunnies, to feed the bunnies.
Yeah, right.
And then you've got some warm crops in a hot greenhouse, which makes sense.
Yeah, these guys think they're living in Florida, not in Vermont, because it gets to, you know, it's in the 80s pretty much in here every day. So I have tomatoes, peppers, and sweet potatoes, all heat lovers.
And then how long will these stay in?
These I'll keep until probably the middle of September, and then I will probably have had enough tomatoes, and they'll come out, and I'll put fall crops of lettuce and spinach, arugula, and those I'll winter over.
Well, I guess we may just have to come back in the fall and see how you do all that.
I hope you do. I better get busy.
Well, thanks so much for having us here today and showing us around.
You're welcome.
For Across the Fence in University of Vermont Extension, I'm Leonard Perry.
For a video copy of today's program, call toll-free 1-888-ATF-3430. Across the Fence is brought to you as a public service by University of Vermont Extension and WCAX-TV.